Hi, I'm Joe Graydon.
I'm Terry Graydon. Welcome to this podcast of the People's Pharmacy, where we bring you the stories behind the health headlines.
This podcast is brought to you by Redix Industries, makers of Utterly Smooth Body Cream. 800-345-7339, on the web at uttercream.com. What do you do when you're hiking far from civilization and something bad happens? What's in your first aid kit? This is the People's Pharmacy with Terry and Joe Graydon.
Knowing what to do in an emergency can make a huge difference between a successful outdoor adventure and a life-threatening catastrophe.
What do you do when you cut yourself accidentally? How do you stop the bleeding? What about bee stings, poison ivy, or summertime skin itches and rashes?
Is butter back? New research suggests that butter should never have been demonized.
Coming up on the People's Pharmacy, we take your calls and questions about home remedies, butter, and your personal summer first aid kit.
First, this news.
In the People's Pharmacy health headlines, compounds in marijuana may help protect brain cells from the inflammation that often leads to Alzheimer's disease. This flies in the face of conventional wisdom that marijuana smokers are forgetful and may be doing lasting damage to their brains. The new research comes from the Salk Institute, where investigators examine the impact of tetrahydrocannabinol and other cannabinoids on the accumulation of beta-amyloid protein in nerve cells. In tissue culture, the nerve cells that have more beta-amyloid protein become inflamed and die. Activating the cannabinoid receptors on these nerve cells by exposing them to marijuana compounds prevents the accumulation and toxicity of beta-amyloid. The compounds help the cells get rid of beta-amyloid that otherwise builds up within them and eventually kills them. Based on these results, the researchers suggest that early intervention might help prevent the development or progression of Alzheimer's disease. This is not the first study to show a link between cannabinoid compounds and reduced damage from beta-amyloid protein. Researchers have been looking at this relationship for at least a decade. So far, however, there are not convincing clinical trials to suggest that marijuana can be used to slow deterioration from Alzheimer's disease.
Medical marijuana may have an unexpected economic benefit in states that have legalized it. A new study in the journal Health Affairs shows that in states where medical marijuana is legal, Medicare spent less for prescription drugs. The savings were projected at more than $165 million in 2013. If all states legalized medical marijuana, Medicare might have saved nearly $500 million. The authors conclude that seniors are using marijuana as a substitute for prescription pain relievers or sleep aids. At last count, 25 states and the District of Columbia permit the use of marijuana for medical conditions. Regulations vary from state to state.
Are U.S. government agricultural subsidies undermining public health? A new study suggests that people who eat more foods made from subsidized crops, such as corn, soybeans, wheat, and dairy products, are more likely to become overweight. The investigators used data from more than 10,000 people who participated in the National Health and Nutrition Examination Surveys between 2001 and 2006. The participants averaged about 56% of their calories from subsidized food commodities. Those who got more of their energy from corn, wheat, soy, sorghum, and dairy were more likely to be obese, have greater waist circumferences, and have higher blood sugar and LDL cholesterol than those eating fewer foods derived from subsidized crops. Most of these foods are highly processed and inexpensive, so they're more accessible to people with low incomes than fresh fruits and vegetables that health experts frequently recommend.
People who develop blockages in the arteries that supply the heart are often treated with a stent, a mesh tube. In theory, the metal scaffolding is supposed to keep the artery open and prevent what doctors call restenosis, or clogging. But bare metal stents can cause cellular overgrowth that leads to blockage within a year or less. Drug-eluting metal stents ooze immune-suppressing medications that reduce scarring or cellular overgrowth, but the metal remains and may require long-term anti-clotting medications to keep it open. Now the FDA has approved the first stent that gradually dissolves in the body. The bioresorbable vascular scaffold system disintegrates in about 3 years and appears to be roughly as effective as standard stents in preventing blood clots in coronary arteries.
Italian researchers suggest that pasta doesn't make you fat, at least not if you eat like an Italian. They analyzed the eating habits of 23,000 Italians and found no connection between pasta consumption and obesity. Among those eating a more traditional Mediterranean diet, pasta consumption was linked to smaller waist size and lower body mass index. The study did show that portion control matters. Obese Italians consumed more pasta than normal weight participants. They were also older and poorer, so inexpensive pasta might be one of the easier foods for them to purchase. And that's the health news from the People's Pharmacy this week.
Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Terry Graydon. I'm a medical anthropologist.
And I'm Joe Graydon. I'm a pharmacologist.
Summer vacations should be fun, whether you're hiking in the mountains or swimming in the ocean. But outdoor adventures can lead to accidents. What do you do when you bruise yourself, get stung by a jellyfish, or develop painful muscle cramps? How about blisters or burns? We'd like to hear about your favorite home remedies for summer health problems. Share your success story about cuts, scratches, itchy rashes, and bug bites. Our lines are open at 888-472-3366. You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com, or you can reach us by way of Twitter. We're at People's Pharmacy.
That number again, 888-472-3366. To find out more about practical first aid advice, we turn to Dr. James Hubbard. He has decades of experience practicing family medicine in both Mississippi and Colorado. He's written a book to help everyone stay safe when they're outdoors and far away from civilization. The Survival Doctor's Complete Handbook, What to Do When Help Is Not on the Way.
Welcome to the People's Pharmacy, Dr. James Hubbard.
Hi, nice to be here today.
Dr. Hubbard, we all recognize that serious accidents require prompt medical attention, but you know, when you're traveling, hiking in a remote region, camping, or even if you just live out of the way, it's not always possible to get to a medical center promptly. So what prompted you to write the Survival Doctor's Complete Handbook, What to Do When Help Is Not on the Way?
Well, I think a lot of people during emergencies like that assume that there's going to be a 911 right around the corner. But it's always, like you said, not the case. Things happen at any time, night or day, unexpected things as far as disasters, as far as at home. And it may take a few minutes for the experts to get there. And those few minutes may make the difference in life or death. And so I with my experience and practice and trying to learn what people know and what people don't know and what people think they know, but is untrue, I decided to write the book.
How is the Survival Doctor's Complete Handbook different from other first aid books?
One thing I think is the illustrations. I have about 100 illustrations. I'm trying to teach. I'm not trying to show that I'm smarter than anybody else in the medical field. I'm trying to teach people what they know. I try not to go overboard on medical terms. I try to explain it in regular day-to-day language.
Well, you know, when I was a Boy Scout, there were first aid books out there, but they were crude. I mean, it was like, if you get a cut, apply pressure. Well, duh. But that wouldn't work so well if it was a really bad cut and it was really bleeding. And so then the question is, well, how can you get pictures? How can you get help? And I think that's what you're really trying to accomplish, is drill down a little deeper than the typical first aid book. Perhaps you can share with us some of the experiences that inspired you as a family doctor to become a survival doctor expert.
Well, you mentioned one about the apply pressure. I've had so many very smart, very intelligent people that have come to the office over the years, and they're bleeding from cuts, and they're panicking, and all they had to do was apply pressure to stop the bleeding. Now, they needed more treatment, sure, but that was the first step, and they don't remember that. I think this is very good to have that in your mind because if in emergencies, you go into a panic mode. And so I saw that intelligent people misunderstood or just didn't understand at all or not know some of the basics. So I started there. Then I learned that a lot of people depend on 911 and have just decided, hey, it's coming. It'll be there in a few minutes. I don't have to know anything about medicine. Then I found out also that when I first started practicing, it was in a small town. It was in the 80s. There wasn't a lot of expert medical care going out to the houses and things like that to find the people. And people didn't come to the doctor quite as much. And so I learned from them. I learned some of the techniques, some of the things they used at home, and some of the things that they thought, again, that was working that were not working, but some of the things that actually were working that were much more simpler than I would have tried.
Well, can you tell us about some of those favorite home remedies that really do work?
Well, one of my favorites is honey. Raw honey, as you know, is fantastic for as an antibacterial type ointment on wounds. It helps it heal. It helps keeping it from getting infected. So that's my major number one thing. It helps coughs. The only thing is just don't give it to very young children. There has been some cases of small amount of botulism spores causing serious problems in young children. It's never been shown to show any problem in adults.
You mentioned honey, and you're originally from Mississippi, and I believe you're back in Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
We had the opportunity to meet was he an orthopedic surgeon, Terry?
Yes.
Dr. Knudsen.
Yes.
And he was living and practicing in
Mississippi,
so in your home state. And Dr. Knudsen was sort of the father almost of the sugar cure. Now, Dr. Knudsen said that he often would have to deal with pretty severe injuries. Sometimes it would be a gunshot wound. Sometimes it would be a wound that wouldn't heal, a bed sore. And his nurse, I think, originally told him that granulated sugar in the wound or honey could be helpful in helping that wound to heal. And when we first heard that, we thought it was total nonsense. But we ended up talking with Dr. Knudsen, and he's treated over the years, before he died, thousands and thousands of patients. He ultimately decided that granulated sugar and...
No, confectioner's sugar mixed with some vegetable oil. So these are things that most people have in their kitchen cupboard if they're not out hiking. And it can be mixed together to make a paste that's like the consistency of peanut butter and packed onto a wound that's not bleeding. It's important not to put it on a bleeding wound. But if you have a wound that's not healing, this works, like the honey.
According to Dr. Knudsen, your thoughts?
Yes. Back when I was seeing chronically ill patients, I saw several with those ulcerated places on their legs that would not heal. And, there are actual wound centers that you can send these people to so that they can do specialized care. And at that time, I don't know if it's still the case, but at that time, they used sugar. That was one of their things, all these fancy things that they could use and all this equipment and their specialty. And still, a lot of them used sugar as one of their mainstays in treating these hard-to-heal wounds.
Well, we've talked a little bit about cuts. One of the remedies that we have heard a lot about and people tell us can be helpful is black pepper on a minor kitchen cut. So you're chopping up the onions and all of a sudden you slip and now you're bleeding. Have you ever heard of black pepper or other approaches to common kitchen cuts?
Yeah, on common kitchen cuts, black pepper, you may have, but I haven't found any real studies that have shown that. I have in my readers' comments, several people say it. They did not say, have they tried it or not. Certainly on a small cut, you can try it. You can also just put the pressure on there and it'll stop usually that way. As far as I know, it won't hurt. One of the things that I say on things like that I'm not sure about, that I'm not sure any studies have been done proving the problem is, if you're not substituting it for a known cure, if it's not too expensive, and if the side effects are small, then, try it if you want to.
Well, Dr. Hubbard, that sounds a lot like our mantra for home remedies. If it won't hurt, might help, and doesn't cost too much, give it a try and see if it works. And we have actually tried the black pepper ourselves. We have not seen any studies, but black pepper under a bandage can seem to stop bleeding a little faster than just the bandage alone.
What about burns? You're at a campfire, maybe you're roasting marshmallows, and all of a sudden that marshmallow drips on your skin and ouch, it hurts. What can you do besides cold water?
Yeah, first off, cold water is the main thing. No butter and no greases, because that just keeps the heat in and can cause the burn to get worse. If you were to have some aloe vera around, and you probably don't want on camping, but if you do, or you have a little in your backpack, then that would be the next thing to do, is put some aloe vera on it. So the first thing is to try to limit the damage and the pain by using either cool water or cool something and aloe vera. The second thing to do is if you're going to be out there very long, the second thing is infection. That's going to be your main problem after a burn, after the burning goes away. So if you have any clean drinking water and you can spare it, then you clean it up really good. You put your honey on it or something like that. You put a little bandage on it, and that's about all. Most of the burns that are either of the blister type or any of the small burns will usually heal with time, and you just try to keep the infection from coming up, which is a major problem.
Dr. Hubbard, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Dr. Jim Hubbard, family practice physician and author of The Survival Doctor's Complete Handbook, What You Do When Help Is Not on the Way.
We welcome your calls about summertime home remedies at 888-472-3366. You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com.
Joe, we have an email from Noemi. She says, meat tenderizer mixed with vinegar works for jellyfish stings. I was swimming in the Mediterranean Sea years back when the whole Mediterranean was infested with jellyfish. We first put alcohol on the area, then applied the paste. It worked like a charm. People carried it with them when they went swimming. This works on other stings, too.
Fascinating. Well,
and the alcohol might be just as important as the meat tenderizer with vinegar.
Indeed. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we'd like to hear from you. What do you do about insect stings, cuts, muscle cramps, or poison ivy?
You can give us a call. Lines are open at 888-472-3366. If the lines are full, you can send us an email, radio@peoplespharmacy.com, or send us a message by way of Twitter. We're at People's Pharmacy. You're listening to the People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon.
If you like this podcast of the People's Pharmacy and want to continue the conversation, you can join us online at facebook.com/People's Pharmacy to share your thoughts or comments.
Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Terry Graydon.
And I'm Joe Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is made possible in part by Redx Industries, makers of utterly smooth creams and lotions that moisturize deeply to make dry skin feel soft and smooth. The number's 800-345-7339. The website, uttercream.com.
If you'd like to purchase a CD of this show, you can call 800-732-2334. It's show number 1041. You can also find it at our website, peoplespharmacy.com.
Today, we're bringing you up to date on the stories behind the health headlines. We welcome your calls about first aid or home remedies for summertime troubles like blisters, cuts, cramps, or bug bites. Our lines are open at 888-472-3366. You can reach us via radio at peoplespharmacy.com or via Twitter at peoplespharmacy. Again, that number, 888-472-3366.
And we go to John in Ellery, South Carolina. John, welcome to the People's Pharmacy, your remedy.
Hey, Joe and Terry.
I understand you're a chef, John.
I used to be a chef. I drive a truck now.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, tell us about your chef days.
It did change, but there's one remedy we always swore by in the kitchen, and that's burns. When you burn yourself, the first thing you should do is grab vinegar, and I know I heard you say vinegar for jellyfish stings,
Mm-hmm.
and it works great for burns. It won't blister at all. It gets rid of the stinging. The pain goes away. I don't understand the science behind it, but it's always worked for me, and I always pass it on to people because, like I said, we swear by it, and it's worked every time.
And if you're in a kitchen, you usually do have vinegar somewhere handy.
Oh, yeah, and we've used apple cider vinegar, balsamic vinegar, whatever vinegar is closest, because you want to get it on there as quick as possible.
Great. John, we're so happy to hear about that. We've not heard about vinegar for burns before. We have heard about mustard, which has vinegar in it, and that might explain why the mustard is working. And we've heard about soy sauce, and we've tried both the mustard and the soy sauce.
And they both work, and they're both available in the kitchen.
And, of course, all of this is after the first cold water.
Exactly. Always follow Dr. Hubbard's advice. Get a burn under cold water pronto. Terry, we go to, where is this? Beltre, Beltry, Ohio.
Why don't we ask Michael?
Michael, where are you?
Right across the river from Parkersburg.
Okay.
All right. Hey, I have an old-time remedy for a bee sting.
Uh-huh.
Slice an onion immediately after you remove the stinger and place it on the sting, and you actually feel the venom drawing out.
Well, I'll tell you what, Michael, we have heard this one before. Apparently, it's quite an old remedy, and what we hear is that it works really well.
Well, you know, Michael, we actually talked to one of the world's foremost onion experts. Now, Dr. Block was head of chemistry at SUNY Downstate, I believe, for many years, and Dr. Block wrote numerous articles about the biochemistry of onions. And he said that there are enzymes in a fresh cut onion that could conceivably break down those venoms. So there's an actual explanation for your experience.
It does have to be fresh cut.
Exactly.
Exactly, yes. But not immediately.
Well, thank you very much for sharing one of our favorite home remedies.
I have another one for cuts.
Tell us.
Okay, this is a yoga practice. It's called Amaroli. It sounds kind of nasty, but you use your own urine. It's a field dressing they teach in the Army in survival, and it cleans out a cut very well. It prevents infection, and it really does. It gets the dirt out extremely well.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Michael. We have heard many times that urine can also be helpful against athlete's foot or other fungal infections. And it always seems like something that people would never really want to do, but they say, well, if you're in the shower, what the heck? So, yeah, we've heard about the urine trick before. Thank you so much for your call.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Joe, we've got an email about a remedy for cuts. Robin says, your advice helped solve a near tragedy. My husband and I were on a trip to Mongolia in a very remote location when he hit his leg on the sharp corner of a metal wood stove. He takes warfarin, which is an anticoagulant, so the bleeding was horrific. Just before we left, I had read about putting black pepper on wounds to stop the bleeding. It was the last thing I tucked in my luggage. The blood was pouring down his leg like a faucet, filling up his shoe. I grabbed the pepper and poured it on, and the bleeding stopped immediately. It was like a miracle. Thank you for saving his life.
Well, I don't think we can necessarily take credit for saving his life, but when you're in the middle of Mongolia in pretty far away from medical resources or 911, it is nice to have something handy.
And we have another email along the same lines. Vivian in Spencer, West Virginia says, lots of people will probably mention this. Cayenne is good to add to your first aid kit. It's high in vitamin K, and it helps clot the blood and stem the bleeding. It doesn't sting.
You know, we've heard this before with regard to black pepper powder, and I'm glad to hear that cayenne is also part of your first aid kit. Let's go to Tampa, Florida. Hi, Anna. Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. What's on your mind today?
Hi. I have a home remedy for a bee sting if you're at home.
Uh-huh.
What I do is first, if you have a credit card, just swipe it over the sting to get out the stinger, and then cut a fresh potato in half, hold the potato on the site, and it seems to pull out the poison.
So instead of slicing the onion, you slice the potato?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's we've not heard that one before, Anna, but we're glad to have an extra remedy.
Absolutely. If you don't have an onion, you probably have a potato. We go to Jim in Sioux, Iowa. Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. Jim, is it true you're a pharmacist?
Pardon me?
Are you a pharmacist?
Yes, I am.
What's your remedy?
My remedy is using tea tree oil on insect bites.
Now, tea tree oil is actually from Australia. The Latin name is Melaleuca. So you have to buy the tea tree oil. And what does it do for the insect bite?
It stops the itching.
Okay.
Extremely fast.
Well, that sounds good.
Yes, I'm surprised you've never heard it before.
Well, we've heard of tea tree oil for all kinds of things, especially nail fungus.
Or any other kind of fungus.
I don't know about nail fungus. It may work for that, but they have a lot of over-the-counter things for nail fungus, but none of them seem to work too well.
You're right.
You're right about that, Jim. But you know, one of our favorites, and I have to tell you, it works for me because I do have a little fungus on one of my nails. And if I just soak my feet long enough in a white vinegar and amber Listerine concoction, a foot bath, but I have to do it for like an hour, and I have to do it over and over and over again, and I don't usually have enough time to do that. But that does seem to control it pretty well. And other people say, well, the tea tree oil works really well for them. What are some of the other nail fungus remedies? Because this is the time of year when people are in their sandals at the beach, and there's nothing uglier than thick, brown, yucky-looking nails.
There's quite a few things that people put on their nails every day and find that it helps. Hydrogen peroxide is one.
Vicks Vapor Rub is another.
The same sort of thing that you would buy in the drugstore. Vitamin E oil. People take a little capsule of vitamin E and they poke it with a pin and they squeeze out that oil all around the nail and underneath. And
so lots of remedies. And thank you, Jim, for sharing your tea tree oil for insect bites. And have not heard that one before.
Fungus, the Lamisil, the prescription Lamisil. They now have that in the generic. You know, and it's pretty safe.
Is that
like
terbinafine?
$4 a month, for people. But anyway, you do have to have a prescription on, and just have to go through your doctor, make sure it's checked. But it is one inexpensive way, and that will take care of it. There again, it takes 6 months, 3 to 6 months for toenails.
Yeah,
you pretty much have to count on that no matter what you're using.
I don't think people realize that you're going to have to be really, really patient. They want the home remedy to work within like 2 weeks. And it's like, no, the prescription drugs take 6 months to a year.
Well, what we're stuck with is how fast do toenails grow? And they grow pretty slowly.
Right.
So, Joe, we do have an email from Liza, who also has something for itchies. She says, I turned a lawn into a natural landscape. Lots of jewelweed came up. It's also called touch-me-not. And instead of grass, it's blooming right now in July. Hummingbirds love the blooms, and it stops poison ivy itching, mosquito bite itching, and anything else that itches. So that's what Liza offers us.
Let's go to Canyon Lake, Texas. Hi, Betsy. You're on the People's Pharmacy. What's your home remedy for summertime woes?
Yes, I have used ammonia for bug bites. And most recently, and also for jellyfish stings, most recently I was bitten by a giant Texas caterpillar, and I put ammonia just on a paper towel and immediately slapped it on it, and I came out with this amazing amount of bright yellow toxin, and it reduced the swelling, and I went to my dermatologist the next day, and he passed it and said it was just fine.
Great.
Now, Betsy, inquiring minds want to know, a giant Texas caterpillar? How big is this caterpillar?
They're about 6 to 8 inches long.
That is giant.
Oh, gross.
Yes, and about as big around as a quarter, and bright brown, shiny carapace. They're amazing.
Well, they sound quite extraordinary, as big as Texas, but and they sting.
Oh yes, they have 2 little pinchers on their heads, and they grabbed a hold of right around the back of my ankle, the narrow part there.
Oh my!
And I mean, just like when I called the Poison Control Center, they said it could be just as bad as a snake bite, and wanted to make sure I wasn't having breathing difficulties, and I didn't. But the amount of yellow toxin that came out as a result of that ammonia was absolutely amazing.
How did you know to use ammonia?
That's been a home remedy for us for years on the Texas Gulf Coast. When we would go down and get jellyfish stings, we'd immediately come into the condo, and we would put ammonia straight on the jellyfish sting, and it would take away the sting.
Betsy, we sure appreciate it.
Well, Betsy, they say everything is bigger in Texas, and I'll have to tell you, those caterpillars sound really scary.
They were. I mean, really, they're different sizes between the males and the females. We've had them inside our house as well. So yes, everything is bigger in Texas.
Thank you so much for the call. 888-472-3366 is the number to call if you have a story. Hopefully, not too many giant caterpillars in your backyard, but we'd love to hear from you. We go to Lynchburg, Virginia. Hi, Bill. Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. Your story.
Well, I've got a surefire remedy for cramps. A teaspoon of apple cider vinegar in a little water, and then wait a while and follow it up with another teaspoon in a little water, and it will go away. Also, don't drink any cola drinks with phosphoric acid. If you're prone to cramps, that'll bring them on.
Okay, so phosphoric acid, that would be any kind of soft drink.
Well, anything with cola. It's going to have, I think they say it chelates calcium, and that can bring on a cramp.
I don't know about the mechanism, might or might not be correct, but it's probably a good idea to stay away from the colas. Now,
Bill, I have to tell you that we have heard from a lot of folks over the years that pickle juice works really, really well for muscle cramps. Football coaches oftentimes will have a bottle of pickle juice on the sidelines when people are practicing during the summer, doing their wind sprints, and we have always thought it was the sodium in the pickle juice because it is kind of salty, but maybe the vinegar has something to do with it too.
I wouldn't like the calcium chloride in pickle juice. That would pickle your intestinal tract. I think the vinegar does better. They don't want you to eat a lot of pickles because if you ever cure up a deer hide in calcium chloride, you'll find it won't rot again. Now, I've got an idea for wounds.
Yes, sir.
It's an Egyptian formula from several thousand years ago. The first day, get a slab of fresh beef and slap it right on, and then after that, honey.
Oh, okay.
And the mechanism with the fresh beef is that, it's got an immune system in there too, though it's not going to live very long, but the phagocytes in there don't care what bacterium they get, whether it's on you or something else, so they will start to work on bacteria in your wound.
Well, Bill, we appreciate that. I'm not sure that's medically sanctioned. It makes me a little nervous, but it is an interesting suggestion. I have an email, Terry, from SM, and this is a problem that I'm particularly vulnerable to. She says, I have problems with chiggers in my garden, and the itch from the bites drives me crazy. I made a mixture of amber listerine, vanilla extract, and oil of orange and sprayed it on my body. I took special care with my ankles, waistband, bra, and also my hair and neck. It was very effective. I detected just one bite under my arm and will be more careful with that spot in the future.
Joe, I just recently saw some research showing that adding vanilla to natural bug repellents makes them last longer. So they're effective for a longer period of time. Otherwise, they're not effective for very long at all. So maybe that's what the vanilla is doing in there.
So, Terry, let's summarize our first aid kit. What should you take along next time you go on a camping trip? Well, number one, we take a little mustard for muscle cramps, not just the vinegar.
But it does have vinegar in it, and that's a handy way to get it.
We take along soy sauce for burns, and you can get those little packets of soy sauce.
Both the mustard and the soy sauce can come in little packets, and so does black pepper. So you would take black pepper, and of course you've got to have some bandages.
Indeed. In fact, speaking of bandages, I would carry along some second skin because you never know when you're going to get a blister, and second skin is just about the best thing you can put on a blister.
You really do need a good insect repellent, and we are pretty fond of picaridin. So Sawyer picaridin, for example, is 25% picaridin, and Consumer Reports says it works really well against ticks as well as against a couple of different kinds of mosquitoes.
Now, picaridin, it's like a synthetic chemical, but didn't it originally come from a natural product?
Yes, I think something out of black pepper. I'm not certain.
Now, what about castor oil for bruises?
Castor oil. We love a little bottle of castor oil for bruises, or you could try Vicks VapoRub, but I think the castor oil is a good idea.
Now, Vicks VapoRub comes in these little tiny tins. They're just perfect for your first aid kit.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Well, meat tenderizer, we've talked about it, and I would say it's a good idea to have a little meat tenderizer and probably a little bit of baking soda along on your first aid kit as well.
Now, a first aid kit. A lot of people just sort of smush everything together in like a bag. But
we do.
Yeah, but, they do sell red first aid kits that you can put like as a fanny pack or a backpack.
Oh, yeah. And it can be red or orange or yellow or whatever color, but you want it to be something that's going to stand out from the rest of your equipment so that you can find it in a hurry when you need it.
Oh, and here's an email from Jim. He says, I use a teaspoonful of yellow mustard to stop cramps. Within a few minutes, the cramp is completely gone. I keep the deli packets of mustard in my car for when a cramp strikes on the road. It works every time. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about butter. A new study asks, is butter back?
Well, I can't imagine eating fresh, delicious, sweet corn on the cob without a bit of butter.
Yeah, like most flip-flops these days, we've probably gone down the wrong path. We'd love to hear your experience with butter. Our lines are open at 888-472-3366.
You're listening to The People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon. If you value the health information you get when you listen to The People's Pharmacy, consider subscribing to our email newsletter. You'll get the latest health news and information on upcoming podcasts delivered to your inbox twice a week. Look for the link at peoplespharmacy.com.
Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. The People's Pharmacy is made possible in part by Red X Industries, makers of utterly smooth creams and lotions helping dry, cracked skin feel utterly soft and smooth. 800-345-7339. Online at uttercream.com.
If you'd like to purchase a CD of this show or any People's Pharmacy broadcast, you can call 800-732-2334. Today's show is 1041, or find it on our website, peoplespharmacy.com.
Today we're talking about the health stories that matter to you. One recent story that caught our eye was titled, Is Butter Back? A systematic review and meta-analysis of butter consumption and risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and total mortality. The second part of the title sounds very much like the medical journal it was published in, but Is Butter Back is a little flippant, isn't it? It was published in PLOS 1, that's PLOS, Public Library of Science 1, on June 29th. and it stirred up a lot of discussion among nutrition experts.
Well, Terry, the study itself seemed, at least from my perspective, to be pretty interesting. It involved an analysis of 9 studies, 600,000 subjects, 15 countries. No link. I want to say that again. No link between butter consumption and heart attacks or strokes. Now, that just runs in the face of everything we've been told for the last 50 years.
It certainly does. We've been told, don't eat butter. It's going to clog your arteries. And yet, there it was. And this is a large study, a good study, and it did not show artery clogging. As far as diabetes is concerned, it showed a very, very, very modest negative association, which means people eating butter were slightly, ever so slightly, less likely to develop type 2 diabetes. Now, that might be because they were getting more calories from butter, so they weren't eating as much bread.
Well, have you been avoiding butter for better health? We'd like to hear from you. You can join the conversation at 888-472-3366. Say that again. 888-472-3366. You can email us, radio@peoplespharmacy.com, or contact us via Twitter. We're at People's Pharmacy. Again, that number, if you've been curious or skeptical or upset about the butter controversy, we'd love to hear from you at 888-472-3366. And Terry, let's take a call right now. We go to, let's go to line 1.
Peggy in Chicago, welcome to the People's Pharmacy.
What's your story about diet and how it's made a difference in your life?
Basically, what it is I am going to be 72 years old this year. I work 50 to 60 hours a week. I have always eaten butter, much to my sisters' and brothers' dismay, eggs, oils. And I remember when margarine was invented after the war, I was standing in the kitchen as a little kid, and my mom brought out this bag, and it was white, and it looked like lard. And she said, look, there's this yellow thing in the middle. All you have to do is punch the yellow thing and mush this around, and look at it's butter.
Oh, Peggy, not too many people remember that.
And I said, no. I said, it looks like white lard with yellow food coloring. And my mother said, you don't like anything, do you? And I said, no. So, so then I moved on from that. My sister, we have heart disease in the family. Just about everybody on my mother's side has died from it, or strokes. And what it is my sister is a couple of years older than me, and we call her the stent queen. She has had multiple stents. She's had quadruple bypass. My brother just went in recently, and he had 100% blockage. So I had chest pain. And, oh, my goodness, they said, this is it. You're going to die. And it's all your fault you ate butter. I said, fine. So I thought, I'm going to the hospital. So I told them, I said, they said, you need one of these angiograms. And I said, I don't need that. I need to go home. I had indigestion. So my sister came in and said, if you don't have this, she said, we are all going to come and intervene. And I thought, well, goody for you. So I said, okay, fine, I'll have it. So they did this, and they said I had a heart of a 17-year-old and my arteries were clear.
And this is on your diet of butter and eggs.
Yes, and now I have only whole milk. I also, and I probably shouldn't say this on the radio, but I also drink raw milk when I can get it. So, this is on my high-fat diet. So the other thing is, though, is I don't eat junk, all right? And I try to eat good oils. When I have a salad, I make my own salad dressing. I get virgin olive oil in a glass bottle. I'm fanatical about that. And also, then I add like a red wine musk vinegar, and I mix it, and then I add garlic, which I grind, and salt, sea salt, which I grind. I also have salt. So anyway, this kind of approach, and I've always had my own garden and grown my own food and never put pesticides and herbicides on it. When I don't make my own salad dressing and I buy something in the store, and this goes for just about any salad dressing, it leaves an aftertaste in my mouth, and it is very, to me, very distasteful. But, I just thought that people should, I'm kind of proof in the pudding, sort of thing. In terms of my cognitive abilities, I'm probably working in one of the most complex environments ever. I am in school, still learning, and nothing easy. It's they're algorithms, and I'm still able to do the proofs. So, it seems to me that someone somewhere, and I'm glad it's being brought up now, and actually, through medical associations, my heavens, that there is something about eating decently, raw foods, healthy foods, kale, beets, making your own salad dressing from decent oils, having organic guacamole, and drinking milk and having eggs. And the eggs, if you can get them from a farm, I really am ranting, if you can get them from a farm, from free-range chickens, that's even better.
So you come from a family with heart disease, and you have siblings who have had heart disease. I think you said your sister is the stent queen. I'm assuming that they were eating a low-fat, what was supposed to be American Heart Association healthy diet, and it didn't really work so well, did it?
Oh, definitely. My sister, when margarine, she's eaten margarine all of her life. And I kept telling her that she eats one of the most unhealthy diets out there. I said, you're eating plastic. I said, it's going to create plaque in your arteries. And she said, that's not proven. I said, maybe someday they'll get the mice to eat the margarine and they'll prove it.
Well, I actually think they have proven it. And as you say, you are proof of the pudding. That is to say, your diet worked for you. And sadly, her heart-healthy diet did not protect her heart.
Peggy, it sounds like what you're suggesting is that we should all be eating real food.
No kidding.
Well, we have a few doctors who agree with you, and we agree with you as well. And we want to thank you so much for talking with us on the People's Pharmacy today.
And thank you for letting me share my story with you. I truly appreciate it.
Well, we invite you to join the conversation at 888-472-3366. You can tell us your story, or you can send us an email, radio@peoplespharmacy.com. You can get in touch through Twitter. We're at People's Pharmacy. That number again, 888-472-3366. We go to Shepherdstown, West Virginia. Jeffrey, welcome to the People's Pharmacy. Please tell us your story.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi, Jeffrey.
I just wanted to tell you that my father lived to be the age of 86. The first time he saw a medical doctor, he was 81. He ate a half a pound of butter every day of his life.
That's a lot of butter, Jeffrey.
Yeah, we used to jokingly tell him that he was not buttering his toast, but rather toasting his butter.
Right, exactly.
Well, obviously it worked for him.
It worked.
And that's a lovely story. Thank you so much for sharing it, suggesting that, we kind of went off the tracks when we thought that margarine was heart healthy. There's a new study out, Terry, that suggests that hydrogenated vegetable oil is really bad for your heart.
That's true. And actually, it is a study that disagrees just a little bit with the study we just quoted from that was published in PLOS One. So the PLOS One scientists are all based at Tufts, and just on the other side of Boston, there's Harvard School of Public Health, and all these doctors published something in the JAMA Internal Medicine earlier this week. And it basically showed that people eating trans fatty acids and people eating saturated fat are ever so slightly more likely to die sooner. But the trans fatty acids definitely worse than people eating saturated fat like butter.
We go to Clearwater, Florida. Hi, Terry. You're on the People's Pharmacy. We take it that you're a butter fan?
Oh, love butter. Hi, y'all. My uncle was a chemical engineer, and 50 years ago when this stuff first came out, told us that it contained leonic acid and that margarine was just 1 to 2 chemical steps more, and it would turn it into linoleum, what they put on your floor. And as a quick household tip, if you take a small smear of butter and smear the lip of your wine bottle, it will never drip red wine on your pretty white tablecloth.
I didn't know that.
Good for your heart and your laundry.
Okay.
Stay away from margarine. Eat butter.
Thank you very much for the call, Terry. We appreciate it. Let's go back to Sarasota, Florida, and we'll talk to Luann. Hi, Luann.
Hi, Joe and Terry. Just a quick thing about butter. I'm an older person, and my ENT physician recently requested that to increase the taste of food, that I just put a little bit of butter before I eat on the back of my mouth, either butter or olive oil before I eat, and then that would increase the taste of the food, and it indeed works. So I just thought I'd pass that along.
Great to hear it, Luann. We appreciate it. And, Joe, we have an email from Jim in Winchester, Virginia. He says, based on your guest interviews over the last year, I embraced fat. About 3 months ago, especially dairy, I began eating full-fat yogurt and cheese and butter, and it is delicious. I've lost about 7 pounds. I no longer have an urge for mindless snacking in the evening.
And here's an email from Carol in Wisconsin. She says, my mother was also born in Wisconsin in 1922 when it was against the law to sell margarine. I didn't know that. We didn't have much money, but my mother always bought butter. I never had a taste for margarine until I was 11 and went to an overnight at a friend's house. I wasn't impressed. Later, when I was a young adult, and I'm 67 now, we were all being told to switch to margarine or we would die. My uncle, who was a doctor, told us not to eat margarine because it had trans fats, which were way worse than saturated fats. The upshot is I'm still alive and doing well.
And, Joe, we've got an email from Elvira who does not like what we are doing.
Uh-oh.
She says we should be citing the source and funding for the studies, the sample sizes, the duration, and she suggests that maybe we've just watched a comedy film called Butter. I've never seen it. Didn't even know it existed until now. Thank you, Elvira. I'll look for it. And that we were making stuff up. I promise you, we're not making stuff up.
And we'll have all of the links to all of the references we've been talking about on our website, peoplespharmacy.com. Now, Terry, segueing to
somebody else who didn't like what we said.
Oh, we were talking about hydration on our last radio show, and my goodness, we were chastised, taken to the woodshed, because I think you said something about tea and coffee as being a good way to get extra fluids.
I actually said anything you drink, almost, not quite, but almost anything you drink that's liquid is going to help with your hydration. And there's no reason to avoid iced tea because it has caffeine in it. And, you know, this is a common thought that because it has caffeine in it, it will make you pee more than you drink. It doesn't, actually.
Well, I think that what this listener was saying is it's a diuretic.
Yeah.
And it will end up depleting your body of fluids, and therefore you'll have a net loss rather than a net gain. But It turns out she was wrong.
Well, it turns out, and we found this recently in the New York Times, which pointed us to a study that was published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in March this year. There was a study done in England, actually, in which they carefully measured what people drank and how much they peed within a specified period of time. And water is perfect, 1-to-1 ratio. Perfect. And most other things are just like water. So coffee and tea and orange juice, all just like water, which is perfect. That's fine. It turns out that there are a couple of things that are even better in terms of helping you stay hydrated or not having to stop the car too often on a long trip, for example. And two of those actually, are skim milk and full-fat milk. So who knew? Isn't that cool?
That is cool. And there's also something called Pedialyte, which pediatricians often prescribe for children who end up with diarrhea. It replaces fluid and electrolytes. And I think they now make these electrolyte solutions taste pretty good, and they work for adults as well. So if you're sweating, if you're exercising, and you need fluids, it's okay to have iced tea or iced coffee, and maybe even excellent to have a little milk.
And Brian emailed us to tell us about his solution for cramps and hydration: a gallon of water, a half teaspoon of sea salt, 4 tablespoons of honey, 4 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. And he says, drink all we want in the hayfield, because that keeps them hydrated. It sounds like a homemade oral rehydration solution.
Well, that's all the time we have. Lynn Siegel produced today's show. Sophie Copeland provided technical assistance. Al Wodarski is the engineer. Dave Graydon edits our interviews. Will McInerney provided production assistance.
The People's Pharmacy is produced at the studios of North Carolina Public Radio, WUNC.
The People's Pharmacy theme music is by B.J. Liederman.
If you would like to order a copy of today's show, you can call 800-732-2334. Today's show is number 1041. That number again is 800-732-2334. You can also find it on our website at peoplespharmacy.com. And when you go to the site, you can tell us what you think about the show. And you can find information on prescription drugs, herbs, and home remedies. And you will find, not immediately, but soon, links to the articles we just talked about.
And Terry, that hydration remedy that we just heard.
Okay, yeah. We'll put up Brian's homemade oral rehydration solution.
Give me the formula again real fast.
It is a gallon of water, a teaspoon and a half of sea salt, 4 tablespoons of honey, and 4 tablespoons of good apple cider vinegar.
Okay, and we'll have that up on the website as soon as possible. And don't forget, you can always subscribe to the free podcast of our show or our free email newsletter. It's all there at peoplespharmacy.com. In Durham, North Carolina, I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Thanks very much for listening. Please join us again next week.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. If so, please consider taking a minute to write a review on iTunes. And thanks for listening to The People's Pharmacy.